Check podcasts.
The Bread and Butter Collective is a collection of hospitality professionals working together to help strengthen our industry to build strong culture, community, and sustainability.
I'm Calen McNeil.
And I'm Sam Jones. And this is the Bread and Butter Podcast.
Welcome to the Bread and Butter Podcast. Hey, Sam, how are you?
Calen, I'm great. How are you?
Doing good. Just got back from Mexico. My aunt's got a little property down there that we vacation.
Oh, what's the
around
address?
Christmas time. I
only
tell
want
you,
you
to be
can
honest.
write it down. Give me directions.
It's about a name about 7 words long with some numbers and stuff.
I'll find it and then I'll tell you how it is.
Yeah.
Oh,
you can come anytime.
I'd love to.
Anytime.
Man, I haven't been to Mexico since maybe my oldest child was like 2 or 3.
Oh, my goodness.
So at least 20 years.
Where did you go?
We went just north of Cabo.
Oh, La Paz?
Yeah, up in La Paz, and like 20 years ago is still kind of a fishing village.
Oh,
So it was starting to grow.
Yeah.
We had a friend whose parents had a place on the beach, and it was beautiful.
My God.
It was just so nice.
Yeah.
And we got the place for a week.
Yeah.
And they had a pool right on the beach, and I'm putting on my swim trunks I had hanging up over the chair to dry off. I put them on, jump in the pool, get my son. I'm playing around. All of a sudden, my butt starts burning hot. It's like a hot poker was just jammed right into my right cheek. And I'm like, oh my God, Heather, come here, take the baby. So she comes and takes the baby. I jump out and I whip off my shorts. Sorry, this is a family show. I whip off my shorts and a little translucent scorpion just goes.
Oh my goodness.
And I should have kept it, but my immediate reaction was just squish it. Because I squished it.
Oh.
Yeah. And I should have really kept it because
immediate punishment.
I know I'd love to have it in a jar, but it was a bad one. The translucent ones are the ones that can kill you, I guess. The doctor said I was pretty lucky.
Did you go to the doctor?
Yeah. I went to the doctor and gave me some shot in my other cheek that hurt way more than the scorpion. He's like, you'll be fine. And he's like, some people, I guess, with scorpion bites are like bee stings.
Yeah.
Some people are going to die when they get stung by a bee, and some people just are going to be fine.
Yeah, they get anaphylactic.
Yeah, and I'm not one of those, I guess. So come on, scorpions.
So what's the lesson? Shake your shorts off before you climb into them.
Shake your shorts off because they do like to go into cool, dark spots.
Yeah, cool. Because it's probably wet when they went in there, and then it dries out.
The lessons we learned in Mexico, that and don't drink too much tequila at the cockfight.
Yes, no.
That's another story that I won't tell.
Another day. Again,
it's my wife's stories, which is why I won't tell it. But
my God,
it was very fun.
We'll have to have your wife on the show. We can go through the ins and outs of cockfighting and tequila drinking.
That's probably a bad idea, but
maybe we'll vet it. We'll have dinner and then we'll discuss it.
Yes.
We'll see if it's appropriate.
Yeah, it's a good story. I'll tell you when we're done.
So what's going on business-wise?
Business-wise, well,
talk to me.
Yeah,
you've been on a bit of a voyage this last year.
My voyage in the last year has been, I don't know how it's been. It's been stressful.
Yeah,
it's been really stressful.
Is stress what drove the voyage, or did you find the voyage stressful, or what came first? The decision to go on the voyage, or you were reacting to a stressor?
I was reacting to a stressor and a lot of uncertainties in the world and not knowing really which way to go. I was looking at mounting debt, and I was looking at a slower, softer economy.
Yeah.
Customer base was shrinking, not because of anything we were doing. It was just shrinking. People weren't going to their offices anymore. And so shrinking down felt like it made sense. Cut your big expenses, close down a couple stores, and shrink and focus on what works.
Yeah, that's right.
And, I was all on board on that until I realized that, sometimes you have to pivot again.
Yeah.
And it wasn't working. Like the shrinking for me wasn't working. It was nice not to have the stresses.
Yeah.
But not having the cash flow that even a moderately profitable business can bring in.
Yeah, even if it's neutral, the cash flow keeps the wheels moving.
Yeah, it keeps the grease, right?
Yeah,
it's grease in the cogs.
Yeah.
And so I was really missing the cash flow, and that was starting to influence other parts of my life.
Yeah.
And so as the year waned and got closer to winter, I could really feel something shifting, and it wasn't a good shift. Like I just felt like something was wrong. I was getting really stressed out and uncomfortable because I couldn't figure it out. So I figured, I'm on this track, and normally when I'm going down a path, I'm pretty committed, and I don't want to look off the path. I just want to go do it. And this last month, I started to look around, or the last 2 months, I guess, I started to look around and see what my other options were.
Yeah.
I was still looking at shrinking. Then this opportunity is coming my way right now that's going in the opposite direction, and it's growing a little bit. And normally I would just say no because I'm on this path and I believe in what I'm doing.
Yeah.
But what I was doing wasn't feeling good.
Yeah, it wasn't feeling right.
It wasn't feeling right. And my bank account was showing that it wasn't the right thing to do.
Yeah.
And I couldn't figure out why. Like everything made sense when I made the decision to shrink.
Yeah.
But I obviously didn't think about everything. So there was something I missed. And so now I'm looking at the alternative, which is, going in the opposite direction, starting to swim upstream again. And the opportunity that is presenting to me right now is really nice. It's like a kind of a gift opportunity.
Yeah.
And my immediate thought when I got the offer was no, because I'm shrinking.
Yeah,
and no,
that's my
this
plan.
isn't what I want.
Yeah.
And thank you very much, but I can't take it. And I didn't want to have to go home and talk about changing plans at home because, my wife was on board with shrinking.
Yeah.
She really believed it to be the right thing to do as well.
When it probably was at the time. You know what I mean? Like,
it was a good option at the time.
Yeah, exactly.
It was a good option at the time. And it felt responsible.
Yeah.
And it felt like holding on to what you have that works through the future, which is uncertain right now, was the safe thing to do.
Yeah.
I'm having second thoughts.
Yeah.
What can I say? I mean, I'm having second thoughts. I'm getting excited about it. And that's really just even thinking about growing. I'm such a sucker for new things. I'm like, show me something
for
shiny.
A good time.
Yeah,
exactly.
Show me something shiny and I get all giddy about it. And this is shiny and I'm really excited about the potential. And I don't know, I think I'm going to do it. I'm talking to Heather about this right now, and she's on board.
And Heather's your wife.
Yeah, Heather's my wife. And I think it's going to happen. It'll probably happen by next month.
Dude, I think that's awesome. I think there's a couple things in there. One is, obviously when you don't have any business partners. There's nobody outside your family that you have to discuss this with, but your wife is your partner. And getting on the same page, and you're out there doing your business day to day, so you see things that Heather may not see.
Yeah.
So making sure that you're discussing things with her and keeping her on board keeps her support there. But the problem is the challenge, I guess, not really a problem, but the challenge is, because I have this in my own marriage too, is we are out there grinding the landscape changes. Mm-hmm. Right. So I often think about the landscape, some people force action, right? So they're like, oh, I've got to do this, like your plan. I've got to do this. I've got to shrink, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. But the landscape is changing in front of you, and you're realizing that some of the decisions you're probably making are like, okay, that's creating other problems over here. And you haven't really planned for that. But then you also don't have any escape hatches, right? So having some escape hatches, and I think keeping the range of options open. And that's difficult in a marriage too, because you pick a path and your wife's doing her own thing and all that kind of stuff. So she isn't in your mind as far as the day-to-day stuff goes. And then when it shifts, it could seem almost like they're with somebody who's got like bipolar or, some mental illness or something, because you're like, wow, over 2 months, you've kind of completely returned or reverse what you were doing. Why are you doing that? But the landscape has changed, right? The priorities have changed. And I think having that flexibility and also understanding your partner's understanding of like, this is what an entrepreneur's life is. is sometimes you can go down this way, but pivoting quickly and understanding when the landscape has changed is so important, because if you stick down that path, you could end up losing everything or greatly reducing your outcomes for success, because you miss those things that come up that are like, wow, here's an opportunity. Here's a way that I can improve cash flow, reduce debt, perhaps, pivot. But sometimes like pivoting isn't just always shrinking, right? Pivoting sometimes is just moving into a different direction, and using the skills. Like you've got all the skills, right? You know how to run a multi-store operation. You've got a team. You've got that experience, and then finding the right opportunity for that, I think is.
And it's not just any opportunity. This is one that it's like close to home too. I've got a real connection with this location, and
well, it kind of feels right. I think because you and I have talked about it as well.
I called you in Mexico going, what do I do?
Yeah, no, but I mean, I think that's the other thing too, is just like you consult with your wife or your partner, is looking to others for advice. And even if it's just to sound stuff off, like that you trust, like especially somebody that's in the similar business.
I leaned on several people from the Bread and Butter Collective just to call and just say, here's what I'm thinking. Yeah. What does that sound like to you? And everyone's got an opinion, and I value them all.
You know, depending on everybody's like experience or risk tolerance or what have you, I think there's little nuggets in all of it that you can benefit from. And I think that's one of the beauties of the Bread and Butter Collective, is that we have a group of diverse people that are all in the industry that we're in. And, you know, they come at their perspectives differently, right. You know, like their experience is different than our experiences. So they're going to have some insight. So before you making final decisions, consulting with those trusted resources, like I sit and contemplate everything and I discuss it with a whole group of people before I make a decision. Ultimately, it's our decision to make, right? So that doesn't change. Like asking for advice or bouncing stuff off other people doesn't reduce your power in making that decision.
It strengthens
it, because, right? Yeah. And that whole collaboration component of it is so often lost with ego and, you know, even insecurity. Because, you know, I think there's an element of insecurity when you're actually exposing yourself with whether you think it's doubt, or I'm not saying you, but I'm saying in general, doubt, or like you know, the worst thing you can do in business is not know the answer or not be able to articulate the direction you want to go in, right? Like having a clear plan is good. Doesn't mean you can't change the plan, but if you get too locked in, then you've really screwed yourself, because you've missed all those other opportunities. And those conversations could be from someone that's not even in the industry too, where they just, give you a different perspective, or just like, I never looked at it that way. Right. So always seeking and being curious is hugely important.
You know, when you say, if you're going down the one path and you're so locked in, you miss out on opportunities. Yeah. It reminds me of the word decision. I think it's decision. Is it decision? The word that has its roots in killing off other choices. To decide something, the root of that is CIDE, which is also found in homicide, suicide, genocide. All of those mean to kill off things. So when you decide one thing, you're killing off the other options.
Oh my goodness. I never even...
And when you think about making a decision, or you decide on something, you always got to say, well, maybe I'm not deciding on it. I'm choosing this choice right now. Yeah. But you're not deciding. You're not killing off the other options and just going full bore blinders on down one path, right?
Well, and I think that is such a key component to success. And I hearken it back to poker, which a lot of things I do in business go back to poker. And what it relates to is a range of options. So you've got a hand, You've got certain inputs, like people raising, people doing things, other people there, which represents your business or your employees or your staff or possible choices. And you can do any number of things. You can raise, you can fold, you can, get up off the table and walk away. You can do a lot of things, but keeping the range. So not getting so locked in to a decision where you're like, okay, if I'm going to make a decision here, I'm going to do this choice based on this information. But if this happens, then I'm going to adjust because now I got new information, right? So I've made a decision, right? Or made a choice. Well, let's call it a choice. Because you don't want to kill any of the other options. And I think that's, speaking of wives, that frustrates my wife too, because I always make my decisions based on a range. Right. So here's where I'd like to go and here's where I'm going to try to influence it. But if this and this and this happens, then I'm going to pivot because the information's changed, right? The landscape has changed. And sometimes I'm just going to let the landscape play out and make no decision, and right? Or no choice.
Just kind of follow
along. Yeah, and just wait to see what happens. Because sometimes in your rush to make choices or decisions and kill ideas and kill options, you've changed the landscape for yourself. When if you just made no decision and just sort of like looked at it and just studied, just take a little bit long, and I don't know, maybe you're taking a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks and then just seeing what happens. A lot of the times the decisions just sort of either disappear or the choices like, oh, okay, well that wasn't a problem or that wasn't an issue now. So you can, and you're thinking about all of the options and the range of options, and then you make a choice.
And you don't ever know if there's an option coming up that may be a better option.
Totally. And then you haven't invested time or energy, but you're still thinking. And that's one of the things in poker. Sometimes the best thing to do is just fold because the situation is just like, okay, if I played this hand, it's a really good hand, but they're showing me that they have a really good hand too. So now you're like, your decisions or choices are coin flips. Versus getting yourself in a position where you're like, I'm an 80% favorite. You see the flop, you see the card come out, you see how your hand interacts with that, and you see how the other people are making decisions, right? So, make your plays in position so that you can see how they act before you act. So letting the landscape play out before you actually make a definitive choice, right? So but still always recognizing, okay, this person in this spot has these 7 possible hands based on the way they're playing. Right. Then as the hand goes on, you whittle it down. Okay, they either have this hand or that hand. And then sometimes you can whittle it down to the exact hand they have. Right. Then you can make a completely informed decision. And that comes with patience and letting the landscape play out or making a few little choices and then seeing how it reacts. And sometimes you don't have that choice. Like sometimes you're like, oh my goodness, I need to make a decision right now. But when you
don't have that luxury of time sometimes.
But when you look at like the overall grand scheme of things, like because we're talking about business direction, choices of where we're going to go and grow, and also try to save. Because saving $1 is as good as making $1. It's actually better. Because better. You don't have to invest anything to get it.
Yeah, you don't see that whole dollar. You see 10 cents of that dollar.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
but you see the whole dollar of the
dollar saved is literally like getting 3 or 4 or 5 times revenue.
Yeah.
Right. So I think often you don't want to cut expenses that are revenue generators, but you want to cut expenses that don't directly relate to revenue, if you know what I'm saying.
So don't pay your phone bill or rent is what you're saying.
Yeah, no, you got to pay those.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got to pay those.
Phone bill.
No, but maybe your marketing budget can adjust, or maybe you don't invest. Like we recently upgraded our van. It was a biodiesel van or a diesel van that we converted to biodiesel. But it was causing, like the biodiesel was causing us pretty significant mechanical issues with the van.
Were you able to use your old oil for it?
Yeah, that's what we do. We still donate all our old oil to the biodiesel, but it became cost prohibitive for this particular van. So it was a Mercedes Sprinter, and the warranty was voided, and there's a bunch of things that were happening that were like, okay, but we made a decision to buy an electric one. But the electric one's like $100,000, right? So maybe you look back and go, well, why do we need to spend $100,000 on that? It's like a $2,500 a month payment when we actually own a van that we could just run on diesel. But because our mission is carbon neutrality, we're always looking to do the right thing when it comes to that. And
at what cost? At
but
all costs?
Well, but this is the thing is like, okay, in my mind, in retrospect, and I could have killed the decision. I could have got, asserted my opinion in it. My team made the call, organized it, did it. I signed the papers. I went and picked it up, all that stuff. But in retrospect, I think from a business standpoint, it was probably a mistake to take on that level, of significant. It's a great van. It's great. It's awesome. And it's long term, it's good for the environment, and we're good with that. But I really like the biodiesel kind of component because it also supports some infrastructure. But I think the way of vehicles will be electric will end up being the way.
The first person I heard of who ran a biodiesel was Alberto from the Italian bakery. He's been doing it.
He's been doing it for years. Well, he's way ahead of his time in so many different ways.
Absolutely.
But it's also you stub your toe a bunch of times, right? And so it's kind of like one of those things where you make a decision in the time that seems like the right thing, but perhaps from a dollar saved component of it, now I'm looking to cut other things when I've just added this debt, that I'm like, okay, well, it seemed like a right decision at the time, and we're locked in and committed to that, but it kind of strangles me a little bit because now I got to look at other ways to cut to get that dollar off. And revenues, you're always thinking about revenue growth and stuff too, but the expense side is where you're going to find the immediate cash flow savings.
Totally.
You know what I mean?
I'm on that path right now. I'm on lots of paths right now, I guess. But one of them is to try to find expenses I don't need.
Yeah.
I just paid off all my credit cards, and now I'm looking really closely.
Yeah.
Wow, look at all the little things that just automatically come off my credit card, like ting, ting, ting.
Well, I'm thinking about canceling all of our we got a couple corporate cards, just canceling them, getting new cards. And then evaluating what was needed, because I don't know, we might have $1,000 a month that is just going through our cards that maybe there's 2 or 3 Adobe memberships, or, you know what I mean? Like you do these things that just get auto billed or.
Oh, dude, I was looking at my Prime account while I was going through this, because I'm like, why are there 3 or 4 charges for Amazon Prime?
You've got 3 or 4 accounts.
I've got one account. Yeah. I've got one account, and there's like 3 or 4 charges every month. I'm like, I'd never seen those charges, so I looked at them and went and looked at my account information, and it was like they were charging me for my TV, for the Prime, but then they were charging me for BritBox and Stars and whatever else is on there. It's like I didn't sign up for any of that.
Yeah,
just
cancel.
Save myself like about $45.
Yeah,
and I still have Prime.
Yeah.
But I just don't have all the extras.
Yeah. Like all that little stuff that you don't even really look at. And it's so easy to just click a button and go, okay. But imagine a business where, I think our volume, like we're doing over 8 million in annual sales. So if you look at our expense budget, if our total expenses with wages and overhead or whatever is, 80, 90% of that.
I was going to say 9 or 10 million.
In reality, it's probably close to the exact number where you're like, okay, well, there has to be a few $100,000 I can save. Like it just logically tells me there should be, but it takes work, like you got to go through all the GLs. Okay. What came out this month? What agreements have we done? What are we buying? Like who's buying?
Do you do that kind of work, or do you have someone who does it?
Well, our team does, like Yan does a bunch of that stuff, but it's because we're not in the day-to-day operations. So like we are in the operations of the global business, but we're not in the store, Cook Street Village store, for example, and making decisions on buying stuff. Like we did when we opened Courtenay. We closed Nanaimo last year and opened Courtenay. We found like a whole store's supply of smallwares. It's like we literally had stuff stacked above the fridge. And then we're like, okay, well, how many other stores have all this stuff? And sure enough, Gateway had a whole bunch. Like we literally had, I don't know, 30 grand worth of stuff that we don't need.
Yeah.
Right. We could have literally opened 1 or 2 more stores with smallwares. It's around 15,000 a store for like bins and spoons and, you know, all the smallware stuff, like little flippers and containers and storage stuff. And it was just like, oh my goodness. And you're carrying that. So when you're in a cash crunch, when it slows down and you got to make payroll, like you've got literally 30 grand worth of stuff that you don't, it's just sitting on a shelf.
And that kind of stuff is hard to deal with because you can't just go in on the street corner with a fistful of spoons.
Yeah, go, hey, get your spoon, get your spoon, get your spoon.
You got some nice long-handled spoons over here.
Yeah, get your spoons. No, it's not quick to turn into cash, but that doesn't mean like seeing it and doing it. I mean, I had a manager a long time ago that basically said to me, pretty sure it was I haven't worked in a traditional job for very long. I think of maybe 2 or 3 years in my career. So some of the nuggets I got out of it, one was like sweeping the warehouse. Like he'd come in and sweep my warehouse. And he's not, and I'm like, why are you sweeping my warehouse, man? Like, don't sweep my warehouse. Like, I'm responsible for my warehouse. If you want it swept, come and talk to me. But when you're sweeping it, I'm basically taking that as an insult because you're telling me by your action that I'm not doing my job. Like, if you're just bored and want to do it, then just say, hey, I'm bored. I want to just do it. No problem. But you coming out every week and sweeping my warehouse is basically sending me a signal.
I want workers like you. When I come sweep the floor, they just all think it's a TikTok break, and they all go on their phones like, "Oh, Sam's working. It's okay."
Yeah, no, he'll do it. And it's like, no, like sometimes you know, like you have to push back. It's one of the things that he said to me: if you haven't touched it in 6 months, throw it out.
Yeah,
you know, like literally throw it out because it's taking space in your brain. It's taking literal space because there's a storage cost too, right? Like. You know, especially when you're carrying stuff on top of your fridge because there's less air circulation up there. Yeah. So now you've got compressor issues. Like you literally are costing yourself money by doing that. You know, and of course, don't just throw it out. Like sell it, discard it, go through it. And it's like opening mail.
And learn from it.
And
moving forward, maybe don't buy so much stuff.
Yeah. Well, look first, do an inventory of what you actually have. Yeah. Then do a list of what you need. And then buy that. But don't buy the other stuff.
I'm a pack rat. Like I hoard.
Well, I think
I'm
a lot
not
of people
personal
do.
hoarder, but but equipment.
Yeah.
I just keep it. I can't throw it away. So I could probably open 3 or 4 cafes with just the coffee equipment I have.
Well, and then there you go. So we have like an ice cream machine that we bought from when we took over the Island Sub in Langford. And I don't know, these things are worth 7 to 10 grand. Sure. It's just sitting in storage for the last 2 years.
Maybe we can move our 2 ice cream machines together.
Yeah.
I've got a little soft serve one that I just sitting on the shelf, not doing anything.
Yeah, and it's like, well, part of the thing is just making a decision over a period of time. So now I'm, you know, because it's been bugging me. There's a bunch of stuff that's been bugging me. One of the stuff is when you're a visionary person like you are, like most heads of companies are visionary people. They're not in. It's hard to become a head of a company if you're dialed in the weeds and the nitpicky of the operation stuff, because you need to pay people to do that part while you're, you know, building the business and growing and that kind of stuff. Yeah. But now I'm like, well, I've been this visionary person and doing this, and I feel like I'm being productive and I'm doing stuff that's good for the business, but sometimes you need to go back into the day-to-day operations of it and then just picking a project. So one of my projects is I'm going to help the team just make decisions on liquidating because I give them a direction and they've discovered the problem. They're like, wow, like our operations manager said, what is going on here? Like we have literally like 30 grand worth of stuff we don't need. And then I'm like, okay, well, let's get some more storage and let's organize it and let's get all the stuff, go through all the stores, blah, blah, blah. That takes time from their job of actually running the store and increasing sales and looking at, you know, producing quality food. So whereas I'm like, you know what, I'm a project guy. I could just go in and just say, I'm going to do that. Because I also can make the decisions of what's right where they're like, oh, well, I can't make the decision. Like, let's put it over here.
Yeah. They're going to have to talk to you anyway.
they're going to have to come to me or come to Yan or somebody else to make a decision, which then takes time for them and the operations, where I'm like, okay, well, I can just do a project for a month and then just go through all this stuff, facilitate it, help it, literally go with a truck and pick. We have 2 containers of stuff in Courtenay that like it's probably can condense in one. So maybe we have one full 20-foot container of stuff we don't need that we took from Nanaimo, brought to Courtenay, and filled Courtenay and set that whole store up and still have another store worth of stuff. Wow. So it's like, okay, well, if I put a pause on our growth just because all of those systems we had in place were choppy and not working. And I'm like, let's not do anything until we like learning a lesson from opening Courtenay and go, okay, we're going to crumble. Our team's going to crumble. I'm stressed to the max. Let's just take a breather. So part of that time is to go back to the systems you're using and just straighten them out, make sure they're working, discarding the ones that aren't, maybe creating a few other ones that are more effective now versus when they, some of the stuff we've been doing for years, maybe doesn't make sense now. So how, evaluate that. So spend that time. It's basically cleaning your room, right?
A little spring cleaning.
And how good do you feel after that's done, right? You're like, oh, I'm organized now. So, but I can, as the boss, I can say, go and do it. And then they're going to take 2 or 3 times as long, or they're going to just go poof, wipe it all out. And then you're maybe throwing 20 grand away. Right. Whereas I can go, okay, let's go with this. Okay. Sell this, boom, 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 boom. And I've kind of got the time, like I could make the time to go meet somebody to look at the ice cream maker and go, okay, where I'm delegating that to my team, but that's taking them away from actually operating the stores and doing what they're paid to do. Right. So, that's kind of the shift I'm going to make this year as well, is just getting in, picking projects that I can just deal with definitively, close it off, and then create some cash, and then you're like, okay, and the same idea with that is going to your books and going to your general ledger of certain items and saying, okay, what am I spending here? So we spend, each store spends like 2 to 3K in small wares. We're spending like 10K. Maybe it's not as much. We're spending 50K a year in smallware stuff. And I'm like, okay, well, why do we keep buying this stuff when we've got 30K of it sitting in storage somewhere? Right.
Put out your wish list. We might have it.
Yeah, we've got it. So let's centralize that. But then going through the GL and the books and seeing exactly what's being charged and which item. So a successful restaurant business should have, say you're just going 30, 30, 30, and 10. But the 30 is the overhead. So it's your fixed and controllable costs, or fixed and variable costs and controllable. Yeah, fixed and variable costs.
So rent, heat,
maintenance, all that kind of insurance, all that stuff is in the below the line. And for us, below the line is our manager, like our senior team, right? Because we don't necessarily need our senior team to operate a store, but we need it to grow and provide support for the stores. Yep. So that goes below the line. Then our discounts, like our staff meal discounts and all that stuff, go below the line. So trying to figure out exactly where your money is and where it's going it's painful. Going through those GLs is like torture, because the other thing too is you need to go back 3 months, because they're, at least 3 months to a start, so that you can see exactly, okay, are these recurring expenses? What are they? Who's buying them? Why are they buying them? Do we need it? And then just going and making those decisions along the way. So then you can move forward and go, okay, well, we're not doing that anymore. Right. So one way to do it, I guess, is with a PO system, where you actually have to issue a PO. So everything is documented, what's being purchased over a certain amount, right? Yep. But all those $100, $200, $300 bills, maybe you set a PO limit of $1,000 or something, right? But it takes work to go through that. And make sure of it. But there's
it's important to see what that is, though.
Well, I mean, imagine we've done it spot wise. We'll go, okay, this seems high. Let's go evaluate it. Right. But we're also having equipment failures after certain periods of time too. So this past couple months, we've spent, 30 grand in equipment maintenance, maybe more.
Wow.
And it's like, okay, what is wrong with their system? We're also paying all these companies to maintain the equipment over the time, but what is critically breaking, and what decision do we make that's causing this? And maybe it's just time, but maybe every 4 years we need to put aside, or every month we need to put aside money for capital stuff, which we do. But when it comes, you never plan for it. As good a manager as you are, or as good an operator you are, you're going to always run into these things unless you're perfect.
And no one's that.
No one's perfect.
No.
But, now this year, like I could just sit back, okay, I'm going to coast and let the team do their thing, and which I've done previous years. And we find ourselves in a spot where, there's things that I've got questions about. So I'm going to either pose a question to my team to answer, or I'm going to just go freaking answer it myself. Right. And it's the painful part of the business, because it's like opening scabs.
Yeah.
Right. And you're like, oh God, this can be painful. But just put one foot in front of the other, say, this project's going to take me 2 months. Here's what my end goal is going to be. Reduce these budgets by X. So when you look at 30, 30, 30, and 10, the 30 is the fixed. It really should be 25, 20, between 20 and 25. When our one store was the most profitable, we had a fixed and variable expense of 20%, 21%.
What?
Now we're at 31%.
What made it increase so much? Was it your rent?
No, well, rents have come up for sure, but rents as a percentage of our sales is still the same. Like the average is, if you should be paying more than 8% of your sales in rent. Right. Like, and people use the 10% number, but it should be lower.
Yeah, 10% is really high.
10% is high. You need to, if you're doing it like at the beginning, obviously it depends on where you are in the growth cycle, right? If you're just starting, your rent might be 25% of your revenue as you're starting, but your goal is to get it under 8, all in, like with triple net and everything. So Big Wheel's rent is 5%, 5 to 6%. So it's within the threshold. Like it's been as low as 4%. But that's a byproduct of the size of a restaurant and the square footage in sales. So our sales per square foot in restaurants is top tier, right? But what's not top tier is, and our food costs are top tier. A little bit high for what we're doing because we're using better products.
Yeah, you've got good beef.
Yeah, we really good beef
buns.
And our veg, and we buy local and all that kind of stuff. So there is an expense in that. We pay really good money to our staff as well. So, all of those things are built in. So 30-30 there is doable. Maybe we're at 32% with labor, right? But okay, that's fine. It really comes down to our senior team, which is the number one cost. Like our rent is the number one.
Yeah.
Or next to 2. Like our senior team went from, it should be around 3 to 4%. It's almost like your senior team is the master franchise, right? So it's if you're going to sell franchises, your senior team. So you're going to charge your franchise fee 4%, right? So that's kind of the overhead limit for me. If you're doing multi-stores, you don't want it to be, we're at like almost 7%. So there's 3% there, right? So it's like, okay, well, I can justify it because we've been on growth mode. COVID threw a wrench in that. Like based on my plan, if COVID hadn't happened, we'd probably have 10 stores now based on our plan. So the team I built can do the 10 store team, right? But now we're at 5 stores. So I need to look at that team and what that overhead is, because having it at 7% is ridiculous, right? So you take 3% off there, you adjust a number over here, and you work on a number over there, and then eventually you get down. So I got to cut 7%. So 3% is right on the senior team, which is like almost half of it. But I got to make tough decisions and to do that. Right. So
doesn't sound fun.
It's not fun.
Sounds like shrinkage.
Well, and it's I'm aggressive. I mean, I've always been aggressive, but as I get older, I'm like, oof, the idea of pushing forward, like I can go push forward 2 more stores, right? But our team, based on our success in the last couple, needs work. Like, and we also need to take some pressure off our store level team so that the systems that we think are working, we need to know they're working or change them so that we can, make them as profitable as possible, but improve the customer's experience. Like my whole angle is, how is the customer perceiving our brand? What product are we serving? Because if we aren't serving good product and giving good hospitality, what are we even doing? Right. Like, why are we doing it? So that's number one priority. So you can just push that. And then we have for the last 3-4 years, well, excluding COVID, and just say, okay, I'm happy with our top line number, and then ignore the bottom line number, and then keep growing. But you're building your business on rubble, on sand,
on shaky ground.
Yeah. And so just get back to the foundations. But that starts with going through all those line items and just cutting the costs, shrinking, so that you can actually, you always take a step back. And this kind of along the lines of what you're talking about doing. You were shrinking, thinking, that is the right way to go. And it was at the time, and it probably still is a little bit, but you then have to realize, at what point do you then pick those opportunities? Like the one that, strategic growth. Okay, I can step into this. It's cash flowing. It's profitable. I can add that to the team where I'm going to add back some revenue without increasing my stress or costs.
Exactly.
Right. And making those decisions, so that, for me, I'm just thinking, I want to support my senior team and my whole organization. I want to give people good jobs. I want to give them a future that they want to have. But growth at all costs is not smart.
Well, growth at all costs ends up costing you, and you end up losing it all.
Yeah, you do. Well, and whether it's your time, your energy, or your heartbeats, your stress level, the team stress level. And if you just take a step back, reorganize, reconfigure, and then you strengthen your foundation, then you can add 2 or 3 more really quickly, build back that team up. Like I would need to do, in order to have, and this is a good exercise, so 600K to be at 5%, I need to do 12 million in sales. So I need 4 more million in sales, which means I need to open 2.5 more stores to justify that. So that ain't happening in the next couple of years. So am I going to just eat that?
Or
or am I gonna
trim that out?
Trim it out, and see what that looks like.
Easier to trim it. I mean, easier physically.
Yes.
Not heart easier. That's for sure.
It's super stressful, but that's where people in business get paralyzed, because it's you can have decision fatigue, but you can also have decision avoidance. Yeah. So, and then getting into decide. Component of it is really killing certain aspects. Like,
it kills off your other options.
Yeah, it kills off other options, and then you got to rebuild. But there's times where the team can absorb those changes. You can't do it if you have weak managers and weak team. You can't do it. But if you have a strong team, then you could ask more of them, and they can absorb the workload. Even because everybody's doing stuff, everybody's feeling like they're busy.
Yeah.
Right. But
and I think maybe that's part of why shrinkage wasn't working for me, was because I felt like I wasn't accomplishing things, and it
kills the entrepreneurial spirit.
It kind of took the heart out of what I was doing for the last several months. Was like I just didn't feel like doing it, so I thought it was at that point where I decided, I can be for sale. Like, I've never felt like I could sell my business before this last year. And I think what brought me to that decision, I mean, it's not a bad decision for the right price. Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
But I would never have done it until I kind of lost my heart of my business by deciding to go one way. I was just killing all these other opportunities, and without opportunity and without something new, my entrepreneurial spirit just kind of it
stifled yourself.
And as soon as I started talking about this opportunity, oh man, all my juices came back, and I felt better. I was smiling more. I was nicer at home. Not that I'm not nice at home.
No, of course.
But it was just, everything became easier when I was starting to,
But it's funny how things get easy when you're on the right path. You know what I mean?
Because you're meant to be there.
You're meant to be there, but you're also seeing some clarity. Like people who go through life, to me, that's a very important thing. If there's conflict, it means you're not on the right path. If you're constantly like beating your head against the wall and running into obstacles all the time, You need to go, okay,
Yeah, something's not
not
working.
working. Like how I'm approaching it, decisions I'm making, the circumstances I find myself in aren't right. There's people that go through their entire lives beating their head against that wall, where you really need to just figure out a different path. And not everybody, has the resources or ability or network to pivot or deviate, but know that if you keep frustrating yourself and you keep, hitting a wall, you've got to change.
Yeah.
The change has got to come through you, because whatever you're doing isn't working. It doesn't matter how many times you're going to keep banging your head against the wall. That wall, your head's going to freaking crack open. Yeah. The wall ain't breaking down, right?
No, they built it strong.
Yeah. So, making sure that you recognizing when you shouldn't have conflict, right? I mean, there's always going to be conflict and you're going to navigate it. But if it's repeatedly conflict and you're like, the world is telling you something, but you're not listening.
Yeah, I think there's a difference between conflict and grit, and what gives you the traction to move forward. Yeah. If you didn't have any traction on the road, your tires are just going to spinning, no matter how much energy you're putting into them, right?
Yeah,
just a little.
Well, that's
bit
a
of
perfect example.
Yeah, just a little traction or a little bit of conflict helps things get by, right? And when you don't have any conflicts at all, I mean,
human nature, they end up creating some conflict.
Yeah, right.
This is where we find ourselves in the world today.
Yeah, people are bored. Have everything. Yeah, everything at their fingertips. Yeah. So what's there to complain about? Let's invent everything.
Yeah, let's complain about everything.
Yeah, everything's wrong.
Yeah, and then reality strikes, and this is where we're going to be, I think, in the next kind of 10, 15 years. There's going to be a ton of stuff that we're going to be like, oh my goodness. This is going to take the price, which is then going to make all that other BS that everybody's screaming about and railing mean nothing, because they're going to be like, oh, now I got some things to worry about. Like this is, it's like COVID was a prime example. Didn't matter what was happening in business. Everything stopped. And you're like, okay, now I got to deal with this and navigate this and figure this out. And it's exhausting. But as you move through, and you'll get into that peace thing. And it's the fourth turning, man.
It's that book. Again, it's the fourth turning.
It always comes back to that book, because it just literally explains exactly what's happening now, what's happened in the past, and what's going to happen in the future. So you can understand, okay, we're going to go through this period. I'm having so much coffee, but your coffee's so good.
Well, you need it a little bit warmer. This means
a little
46
little
minutes.
Top up. So yeah, I mean, people get complacent.
Yeah.
And that's what I talk about, creating your own action. Sometimes creating your own action is good, because then it spurs you to do stuff. Like you're like, okay, I'm bored or I'm like complacent and it's affecting me. So let me, get another shop, or let me pick another project, or let me go create some action for myself. And that's the opposite of letting the landscape play out in front of you. But a certain amount of action is important, because people like ourselves and other entrepreneurs that are idea generators need to have these projects to keep them inspired and going.
Well, yeah, it puts you in the right frame of mind. Yeah. Like I kept thinking, yes, when I'm thinking about what I'm going to do next, I think, it's positive and it makes me feel good and it inspires my creative juices. But beyond that, what that does is it changes my mindset.
Yeah.
Completely, from being almost a defeatist mindset to an everything's available mindset all of a sudden. And when you have that positivity in your mind, everything comes to you.
Yeah.
It's either everything starts coming to you, or you're in a mindset where you can see what's always been coming to you.
Yeah.
And you're able to pick up on it.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're in the wrong mindset, all those
you're close
good
to
stuff just passes you by. You don't even see it.
Yeah, bad and good stuff.
Right. Yeah.
When people talk about luck and they go, "Oh, you're so lucky because you built this business," or "You're so lucky because you've done this." You create your own luck.
Well, yeah,
right. By being out there, there's always luck is a part of everything.
But you're right. You do create your luck.
You can create your own luck by putting yourself in spots to make the correct decisions. And then when you stack those correct decisions, then all of a sudden you're the luckiest person in the world. But they're all decisions that you've made along the way that have got you to that point. That's created your own luck. The vision of luck. And that's it's a perfect poker analogy. Every hand you make a decision. And if you make correct decisions, you're going to go deep in the tournament, right? because even if your decision doesn't work out, it was still a correct decision, right? So putting together as many correct decisions as possible, and then not beating yourself up on the bad ones, but just learning from them and then adjusting, but then just continuing to try to get that record of correct decisions. Because before you know it, you're going to be out of the problem that you're in. There may be new problems down the pipe, but you're ready for it because now you're resilient, and you have a plan, a decision-making tree on how you're going to process it, right?
And you've already been through lots of positive steps, which is just encouraging. It's
totally.
Momentum.
Yeah, it's momentum. Right? Exactly. Yeah.
I've been thinking lots this last week about something that we've talked about before, about what real value is as an entrepreneur. And I got this opportunity to give, it's not a TED Talk, but it's like a cooler TED Talk or something, a Pikachu, or I'm bastardizing name.
Yeah. We make stuff up on the show. So.
It's an event where you go and
it's like a TED Talk.
It's like a TED Talk.
Yeah.
And I was wondering, it doesn't have to be about coffee.
Yeah.
It can be about entrepreneurial.
Yeah.
So I'm talking to Heather about this. And as much as she's not really part of the day-to-day business, she sees me and she knows me really well. And so she's like, why don't you talk about what a true value is for an entrepreneur? I'm like, oh, yeah, I know lots about that.
Yeah.
Calen have talked about that lots.
Yeah, totally.
And so thinking about values and what it means, I was not having a valuable time last year. It didn't feel valuable monetarily, physically, mentally.
Yeah.
It was hard to find the value for
me. Yeah.
So just by her encouraging me to talk about that, it's made me think deeper about what values are for entrepreneurs. And it's such a great topic. I'm going to do it. I'm going to do my talk on that.
I love it. Yeah, I love it.
I'm not going to talk about coffee.
You know what? There's always going to be intersects because that's your line of business.
Sure.
But they're placeholders for the story. You know what I mean? Like your examples will be drawn from your business that will relate to the coffee business, but it'll be more about the spirit of entrepreneurship and, depending on what you're going to talk about. Yeah. But it fills your bucket.
It really does.
We've done a lot of we've had some schools over the years that have come in with their class. So they'll come with a bus and there'll be, 20 students that'll come in before we open, and then they'll buy lunch. We'll give them a discounted lunch. And then I'll talk about entrepreneurship and how to do a sustainable business and all the different components that we have in our business. And it just refocuses myself on what our core values are. And also it's inspiring to share that knowledge with a group of people that are fresh in the world and ready to achieve their goals. And it's rewarding. So I'm going to be doing more of those type of talks because I enjoy them. The students seem to enjoy it, but there's also like groups that could come in and do it. Like, could be good team building exercises and just to learn about a different business and, new ideas on how to run a business and all those things. So it's funny you say that because I've always done sort of like I do most of it without a presentation, but I want to refine it. So it, cause I enjoy it and it's actually a good little, spot, little extra added value to do the stores. Courtney's got a class coming in at the end of the month and, they're just going to come in and go for lunch and it was like a day trip and see the business, but why not add value? I can go up there and have a conversation with the students about entrepreneurship and business. Doesn't need to be related about burgers, but it could just be about, goals and business and things like that.
And what value is. And because people who are thinking about going into business and they have an entrepreneurial bent might be thinking, well, how much money can I make doing this? Which is an important thing to think about because it needs to be sustainable.
Yeah, the money is important, but it's never the driver.
It's not the driver. Yeah. The driver is either the product experience or
building
your own well-being.
Yeah, exactly.
And you can get that well-being depending on who you are by growing something, by fertilizing your soil. You know, you make everything better.
Well, and I think the money is a byproduct of the effort, and it's the way people keep track of score. But it doesn't necessarily, and again, it relates to sort of poker, like the number of chips you've got or accumulated should reflect, your ability or the decision making, but doesn't always. You may get unlucky, but the journey of it all, the experience and you know, the wins and losses of it is all part of it.
And it's a way of life.
Yeah.
Too. I mean,
yeah.
I could not, I mean, I can't imagine having a job, but I could
Yeah.
imagine having the same lifestyle
Yeah.
if I had a job. I would probably have a bigger bank account if I had a job,
Yeah.
honestly.
Yeah, me too.
But I wouldn't
Yeah.
have the time available
Yeah.
to come hang out with you.
Yeah.
I
Well, and
wouldn't-
this is
I
where
wouldn't be able to
time,
have that flexibility.
you buy
in my
time.
life.
You know,
Yeah.
and this is where you get back to, I think we've discussed on previous shows about where profit is,
Yeah.
right? So people think of profit as being money, which is, that is true. There's one, you know,
That's one
one
definition.
component, but the profit in reclaiming time, the profit in doing rewarding things. I mean, most of my time has been spent the last couple of years on our foundation, which is like so rewarding, you know, but I also need the business fundamentals to be there in order to have the foundation and make it work. So there's always a reminder, but the profit I get out of that is like immense. And it's way more, you know, rewarding day to day than it is looking at the GL of where I spend my money, you know, or where we spend it. But both are important, but it's, profit comes in different forms and fashion.
You know, after this conversation, I have to go see my bookkeeper for a major meeting.
Yeah.
And I'm going to tell her that. I'm going to say, you know what? That bottom line isn't the only thing on the bottom line.
Exactly.
There's my happiness
Yeah,
involved
exactly.
here. Come on. Is there a line for happiness?
You watch their
Isn't
brain
this
just kind
Bhutan?
of go,
Isn't Bhutan, the country Bhutan, don't they rate their GDP in happiness?
who? What country?
Bhutan.
Where is it?
I've
never heard of it.
Between Tibet and India, maybe?
Oh,
Or Tibet, Nepal, in that,
Oh,
in that
interesting.
region.
interesting.
And Bhutan, as conflicted as it may be, and not super economic.
I'm going to Google
development,
Bhutan later. So
I think their GDP or some measure of happiness
they
is
record
like,
it?
they record it.
So they do like surveys or
Yeah.
interesting.
It's
But
pretty cool.
you know what? That I think that might be a veil for something else. You know what I mean? In
Probably
that,
there's a heavy drug trade going
yeah,
on
or
through
something,
there.
or like, hey, let's measure people's happiness.
Yeah.
As a form of GDP, because we're the happiest people on earth.
Yet the poorest.
But I think, the poorest. But I think that there's something to that. Like there is. And I think as we're shifting through our priorities in life, especially with all this nonsense going on, like in everything in the globe today, which is just all manufactured BS.
Yeah.
You know, there's some issues, obviously, there always is. But the idea of the sentiment of it all is just
It is
BS.
manufactured.
It's manufactured.
It is manufactured
We've
for sure.
gotten bored as a society. We're making our own action, but not in a positive way. You know what I mean? Like we're creating drama and storms, and there's going to be terrorists for absolutely no reason. The U.S. economy is the best it's ever been. The global economy is on fire. It's not without issues, but then they're just literally going to own the world by putting these tariffs on, and it's going to crash the global economy. And then the rich barons will just scoop up all the cheap stuff, and they'll have poor people to do their work for them and wash, rinse, and repeat. That's just out of like, there is no reason to do any of it, but that's what's going to happen. And they're creating their own action when you literally can just sit back and do your own thing and just be local, right? And just focus on what's going on here while that noise goes, because it's all noise.
I think maybe 2025 is the year I cancel all my social media.
I've been contemplating it. I switched to Blue Sky. Like even the stuff with Meta, like when politics and business mix, and then with religion, it's a recipe for frickin' disaster, and has never historically worked in the history of time, right? Ever.
No.
So when you have, you know, the Zuckerbergs and the Musks and the Bezos of the world that control massive media empires, all of them are now like bending the knee to anybody. It doesn't matter who it is. If they bend the knee to Biden or to the Democrats in the States or to Justin here, whatever, it doesn't matter. You need to be independent thinkers, and you also need to elevate people, lift people up, not look to, like when they changed we're not going to do fact checking, and it's about free speech. Like free speech is about control over government suppression of speech. That's what it is.
That's what free speech
That's
is.
what's free speech.
Yeah.
Everybody in this world can say anything they want to say, right? But to let it just go mainstream and poison people's brain, like it's already, the algorithms have already changed. And I'm like,
And purposely.
And why am I
doing
seeing this very attractive woman with a mega hat on praising, justifying her vote for Trump in all the ways that don't even touch the underlying issues with those decisions? Like there's more people crossing the border. It's all just BS, right? And crime is up, and that's why I did. And it's like, dude, you literally are picking a path that is going to has led to genocide in the past,
Sure
right?
has.
So all of this stuff that you're justifying it as your Christian values or whatever, it's just like, now I'm seeing it. Like I don't want to see it. Whereas before she wouldn't, and she even said it, I'd never talked about politics, but now I can come out of the closet and show and it doesn't matter if you're on the left or the right or whatever. Like the truth is in the middle, and there's aspects of everything that has some benefit and some positivity and all that kind of stuff. But we're now being spoon-fed the BS and with no guardrails. And it's like, I don't want to be a part of that.
And we're just gobbling it up as a people. We just
if you look
gobble it
at,
all
I'm
up.
traveling, so I'm in Mexico, and I look around at there was, I mean, we were in our private, my aunt's got a place, and my mom have a place down there, so we stay there. But when I went out of the compound, and I'd be at the beach or at a pool, or my friend owns Acre Resort down there. It's beautiful. But you're there and you just look at everybody with their phone in their hand and just scrolling, just literally just brain candy, endorphins being pumped.
Yeah.
And, I'm like, okay, there's something wrong here.
Look where you are.
We're in a beautiful spot. And I was reading books. I read a couple books, and I'm like, but I get into that trap too, where I'm like doom scrolling, and I'm just like, what am I doing? And then you're being pumped this BS. Like, it's BS on every front. These people don't live like that. These people don't think like that. And now I'm being inundated with BS. Like even on, there's left BS and there's right BS, and none of it is good for the brain.
No.
Right?
And,
None
and
of
it's
it
not wrong
produces anything.
to have BS. We all BS a bit, but when the BS becomes policy, like that's like when people take other people's BS seriously.
Yeah. And the
It's like
institute
it's not
change.
serious.
No.
Like people's opinions
no.
shouldn't be super serious to you.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
should have
Exactly.
your own opinion that's
exactly.
serious to you.
Exactly.
Not give a rat's ass about what someone else thinks about something that you already have an opinion on.
Well, and I think the discipline of that, and we're veering off the business end of it, but I think it relates to business because it's all distracting, and it stops you from feeling good about yourself or moving yourself forward in a way that's positive. And I think, getting back to the beauty of our weekly discussions is that we can actually, like, we're not on our phones. We're actually focused and paying attention to each other. And that, to me, is where life happens.
Sorry, I've been thinking about Mexico the whole time.
But that's where life happens, right?
It
It's
really
in those interpersonal things. And if you, regardless of the people, if you go, I mean, obviously there's exceptions because there's bad thinkers and bad people. But if you go and meet anybody in North America, you can actually find middle ground. You can actually find discussion. You can actually have discussions about, what they think about people and humanity. And they're all going to be, majority of the people are going to be like, yeah, no, I don't think like that. But then you look at their social media profile and you're like, wow, you're railing against these people you don't even know. And it's all based on nonsense.
And this all feels like they're like creating or playing a character that they want other people to see, even though that's not who they are.
Not really who they are. And like, oh no, that's just my profile. That's just my online thing to get clicks or to get whatever. And it's just like,
why are people so shallow?
I know. Well, it's
because that's a shallow place to be.
It's thankless because it's like a heroin addict. You're just chasing the next fix.
Yeah.
Right. What's going to like rage bait me, or what's going to, make me be sad, or what's going to make me be happy. Like it's,
and then once the algorithm and your scrolling triggers all your serotonin, then that it's the same thing as heroin.
Yeah.
You are chasing the dragon, not to feel better, but just to feel.
Yeah, exactly. And then it's like heroin. Nothing's better than your first hit, right?
I was
Not
saying
that
I was saying that the other day. I was having my first sip of a pint of beer. I looked over to the guy sitting next to me. I'm like, after this first sip, it's like chasing the dragon.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, you know it.
Yeah, the second one's not as good. The third one, and then the fourth one, you're like, oh my God.
Yeah, then I just don't even want it anymore.
Yeah, exactly. But it's interesting. I mean, it's going to be interesting for this year. We're going to have some good guests on.
Yeah, we sure are.
And
I'm looking forward to our first couple, actually.
Yeah, we've got some good ones. I also I'm going to bring on 2 of our senior leadership team people just to get their perspective on what it's like working in a business like this for me,
for you,
but also
particularly.
Yeah, well, for me particularly, but
you in the hot seat.
Yeah, no, I think it would be good because I think it's like it's easy for us to be talking about what our vision is or what our issues are in our company, but how about talking to the people that are actually in the streets, working it, and seeing what they feel about what success looks like, or what, how do you inspire them, because I think, not being connected to what your team is doing or what their priorities are is a big blind spot to people like us.
Well,
right?
The whole Bread and Butter Collective is for the owners, right? And so we definitely come at our conversations from an owner perspective. Yeah. And we don't bring in people who aren't owners really in businesses. There's a couple special guests that we've had, but generally that's our target market, is who we want to talk to. So it'll be nice to see why we have that focus. And the only way to see that is by exploring the other.
Well, and also just asking, like, what do you see for your future in the next year or two? Doesn't need to be specifically about working for Big Wheel or working for 2% Jazz or whatever, but it could be just about how they view themselves in the organization, right? Which could be very insightful. And I think, it's almost like a secret shopper or a secret boss or whatever, going to find, like, you see those shows where the boss goes into the ground, they're like, oh my goodness, I didn't realize my organization. Because my view of my organization could be totally like 90 degrees or 180 degree or whatever from my staffs. And I want to be connected, because that's also like spending time with them too. And it's part of life, like, I don't know, like you can sit in your ivory tower and not remember that there's people affected by decisions you make.
I love the undercover boss idea. I want to shave and shave all my head hair completely. You think you would recognize me?
Oh,
it would be difficult.
It would be like when I was a kid and my dad shaved his beard and I'd cried, where's that stranger? You do it and I'll be just like,
oh my God. Well,
you'll be rattled.
I would be rattled. I'd be breaking the camera lenses.
It's like Solomon, man. Yeah. It's your hair. Is it Solomon? Not Solomon. What's the guy who grew his hair?
Slash?
No, like I think it's biblical.
Oh.
Oh my God, I'm embarrassing myself now. The guy who grew his hair and then he cut his hair.
The Bible was the first book I read.
Is it Samson? I think Samson. I don't know. Anyway, your hair is your power.
I thought for sure
Samson's
you were
hair.
Say Rapunzel, but I wasn't.
No.
I was pretty sure she wasn't part of the Bible.
No, I think it's Samson.
Okay.
I think he didn't cut his hair, and then he cut his hair, and then he didn't. Nobody recognized him. His power was gone. Yeah. He had power with the hair. You got power with your hair.
I know,
is my point.
I would love to cut it all off one day just for fun. Maybe Halloween.
I think you should do it. Like,
that's almost a dare.
It is
so close to a dare, man.
I remember Peter Zambri and we were on a fishing trip, and there was a group of us, and Andrew Moyer, who's going to be a guest here in the next couple of weeks from Ottavio. I just
got some chickens from him.
Yeah, he's amazing. So we all went on this fishing trip, and then there was this part before we were fishing, there's like wharf and stuff, and then there's this old derelict dock, and there's this board that's going from the shore to the thing, and that board was like, there's like a crack in it, And then Peter and I are looking at each other, and we were looking at the board, looking at it, and he looks at me with this grin. He goes, should I go across? That's Peter calling. Don't tell the story.
Don't tell that story.
Should I go across? And I just had this, and I go, yeah. Knowing full well if he goes across, he's gonna fall into the water. It was hilarious. We just laughed because we both knew. Like, he's like looking for verification. I'm like, go do it, and then he's just like, no. Like, we never would. Yeah, let's go. And we laughed and laughed and laughed. Yeah, exactly. Just like watch him just jump off the bridge. Going, oh, this will be fun.
All right. Well, next Wednesday, you never know what's going to happen.
Oh my goodness, that will be awesome.
It probably won't happen.
It probably won't happen.
Honest.
But the thing about it is, change is as good as a rest.
It is. But
so,
man,
new year, new you.
You've never seen me without hair. It's
I haven't.
It's not a pretty sight, man.
Well, I think you might be. Yeah, I don't know.
I've got my hair strategically placed.
Yeah,
it doesn't look like it, but it really.
I see the strategy there. I do not see the strategy. Okay.
Hey, something I wanted to bring up because I sit here every week. You know who else was sitting here? Pierre Polivet. PP. Yeah, the old PP guy. He was sitting right in our little studio here. And he was sitting with these headphones on, sitting in this chair, which makes me want to like take off the headphones and look at them with a little bit of like star envy and then disinfect them.
There's a lot in that statement.
I like to cover both grounds.
Yeah,
both sides.
It's middle of the ground.
Yeah,
middle of the ground.
But probably the next Prime Minister of Canada was sitting right here where we are.
Yeah, this is the power station right here.
Exactly.
Well, we'll cross that bridge when we get to it.
Well, that is something that's going to happen in 2025.
Yeah, there will be an election in Canada, and we will be defending tariffs in Canada.
Depending on livelihoods and the 51st statehood.
Oh, my goodness.
That's
our show's going to be very interesting as we move forward, and hopefully we don't alienate anybody. And it's all done with love. We love everybody.
No alien anyone. No. We just, talk about everything.
Yeah, we'll talk smack.
It's all good. Oh, yes.
All right, brother.
Talking smack.
Remember to be kind.
I will if you be nice.
Will do.
All right.
Thanks, Sam.
Thanks, Calen. Have a great day.
You too. Bye.
Bread and Butter Collective's membership includes the following local businesses: 2% Jazz, Bunny's Kitchen, Buzz Coffee House, Eagle-Ite, Big Wheel Burger, Blue Mountain Solutions, Bodega Tapas Wine Bar, Eva Schnitzel House, Farmsgate Foods and Catering, Victoria Chocolate and Company, Drum Roaster Coffee, Habit Coffee, Foo Asian Street Food, the Culinary Arts Program at Camosun, Cafe Fantastico, Fall Epi, Harold Street Brewworks, Hey Happy, House of Botang, Nikkei Ramen Ya, Jenny Marie's Cracker Company, La Pasta, La Rue Patisserie, Mocha House, Part and Parcel, Poco a Pinto Bar, Pizzeria Prima Strada, Keating Pizza, Roast, Table 9 Consulting, Sherwood Cafe and Bar, Sweets by Selena, The Collective Wine Bar and Kitchen, The Drake, Tapa Bar, The Nimble Bar Company, Ruth and Dean, The Whole Beast, The Wienery, Spoon's Diner, Truffles-Inspired Catering, and Zambries.
To hear more from the Bread and Butter Collective, go to checknews.ca/podcasts on Check Plus, or find us on your favorite podcasting platform.